My next guest is a fierce defender of civil liberties. So what does he think about these new proposals? We welcome New York Democratic Congressman Jerry Nadler. Congressman Nadler, I was once a constituent of yours. It's nice to meet you. Welcome to Freedom Watch.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Start with what upset me the other day, listening to your Congressman Jim Clyburn, who I think is the number 3 ranking Democrat in the House, when after the tragedy in Arizona, he was quoted as having said, "We need to rethink the parameters of the First Amendment." Do we ever need to rethink the parameters of free speech, no matter what's going on? Isn't free speech a natural right?
Free speech is a natural right, but we are always rethinking. I don't agree that in this connection we have to rethink the parameters of the First Amendment, but every time there's a court decision, we're rethinking the parameters of the First Amendment. Right now, for example, the government is looking to prosecute, to figure out a way of prosecuting the head of WikiLeaks. That would be rethinking the parameters of the First Amendment, because most constitutional scholars think that although someone who works for the government and is privy to classified information, gives it out, commits a crime, someone who then publishes it does not commit a crime.
That law is pretty clear under the Pentagon Papers case.
I think that law is pretty
wrong to try and prosecute.
I agree that it would be very wrong to try and prosecute, but that would be redefining the parameters of the First Amendment.
Would Congressman Clyburn be wrong to stir up the FCC to monitor the airwaves to assure that for every Rush Limbaugh there's an Ed Schultz? Or is that simply the choice of those who watch the TV rather than the government?
Well, I think that's a different question. For over-the-airway TV, it's supposed to cable TV.
Cable.
No, for cable TV, that you couldn't do that.
Okay. For over-the-airway TV, the government can monitor the marketplace?
No, for over-the-airway TV, the public airwaves, they're given to stations, or they're really temporarily given to stations for their use in the public interest, and the government would have the right, which it exercised in the past but not in the last 20 years, to demand that all political opinions have equal expression.
Well, the government has dropped the Fairness Doctrine because of cable. In large measure, because you can get any opinion you want.
I think it dropped it before cable became ubiquitous. It dropped it because the Reagan administration didn't like it. But there's a fair
back.
For over-the-airwaves TVs, I think they should bring it back. I think
the government should decide.
Not the government should decide.
Well, the FCC is the government.
But I think it makes sense for people to be able to hear as many sides of political dispute, political opinions as possible, and as long as it's the government's or the people's airwaves, that should be used for that purpose.
Is the left upset with President Obama, or I should say the post-November 2010 elections President Obama? I'm going to guess, I don't know for sure,
part of the
you voted against the compromise to retain the Bush tax rates.
I did indeed. And I voted against it for a number of reasons, many of which I'm sure you've heard.
Right.
I didn't like extending the Bush tax rate.
Betrayed by this Democratic president?
I wouldn't use the word betrayed, but let me say that it was one other reason that I was very upset with this. I think it's a major mistake to have supported that. And that is when the right or conservatives say we've got to reduce Social Security benefits or increase retirement age or whatever because of the deficit.
Right.
We always reply that it has nothing to do with the deficit. Social Security is walled off, self-financed, etc. But under this tax so-called compromise, the general fund is now going to be subsidized Social Security at $120 billion a year. So you're going to put Social Security right into the deficit debate, which is not good.
And the president rejected the fundamental principles of his own and of the Democratic Party in order to craft this compromise with Republicans.
Well, he would say he was forced to do that in order to keep the middle class tax cut, but I think it was a bad deal. I would not have. I voted against it.
You voted against it, and you voted against it. You voted against it again, and you tell them that.
I certainly would.
Congressman Nadler from New York City, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Watch.